All right. Now I've got some data pulled up here. I'll go ahead and jump right in. We'll start off with the live look of the storm here. It's looking really nice on satellite. Like, it's amazing how much of a difference even just like 12 hours or so has made with this. So what we're looking at here is visible satellite. You see how you have the spiral bands out here on all four sides of the storm up to the north. Down here, that's just signs of a very healthy storm. The colored pixels you see in here, these are actually lightning strikes. The GOES 16 satellite can actually detect lightning, and so that's something we'll look at. Is if you're seeing a lot of lightning activity in the storm, it's a sign of strengthening. And we have been seeing some intermittent bursts of lightning. The center is more or less kind of right here where I've got the cursor. It's in between. This is the Isle of Youth of Cuba and then mainland Cuba. So like I said, it's kind of right in between there. I'll switch over to infrared satellite view right over here. So here's the infrared satellite view of the storm with those very cold cloud tops indicating very strong thunderstorm activity near the center of the hurricane. So again, this thing is just looking really good on satellite. So just wanted to show that. It's too far away from the U.S. mainland to have any radar views right now. As it gets closer over the next couple of days, we'll try to have some of those radar views. But right now, we've really just got the satellite view. So switching over, we'll start the official forecast here. So I always like going just straight to the tropical storm wind probability because that's what we really care about more than, where does that exact center. The exact center obviously does matter, and I'll pull that up in a second. But we'll start with this, and you can see pretty much all of South Louisiana is under the gun here. With this tropical storm force wind probability, that's winds. This is the probability of 40 mile per hour or stronger winds during the next 5 days. As I said, painting pretty much all of South Louisiana in that. And then if we switch over to the hurricane wind speed probabilities, right now you can see where we're highlighting over a 50% chance in kind of that area from about New Iberia down to Grand Isle, but even over 30% well inland. And you might be thinking, 30%, that doesn't seem that high, but, just ask yourself, what's the given chance of a hurricane force wind on just any normal day out of the year in Louisiana? It's quite low. So actually, if you think about just compared to normal, 30% is a really high chance. So anywhere you have these kind of over 30% right here, that's kind of the greatest area of concern for the high winds. And I'll pull up some more localized stuff in a bit as we go through. So just to pull up kind of that classic cone graphic and with the warnings on it. So this is the latest forecast from the Hurricane Center. They just put this out at 4 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Again, right now between the Isle of Youth and mainland Cuba. Going to get across that and should be out in the Gulf of Mexico by tomorrow morning. And this next position here is 2 a.m. So we'll wake up and it should be out over the Gulf of Mexico by that time. Forecast to strengthen into a major hurricane. They don't explicitly show the wind speed on here. The M's just mean major hurricane, but they're forecasting it to get all the way up to 140 miles per hour at this last point before landfall. It's Category 4 intensity as it approaches the Louisiana coast. Right now, they're showing it crossing the coast. This is kind of near like Terrebonne Parish, St. Mary Parish, Morgan City area, kind of between Morgan City and Grand Isle. Don't want to zero in too much though, because this cone, this isn't just an arbitrary cone. The cone drawn by the Hurricane Center that actually represents kind of the average track error in this, and so how this cone is actually drawn is about two and three times they expect the center to stay within the cone. Now, one thing we'll look at with this particular storm is the models are actually in pretty strong agreement on the track. So I think, we can say with pretty good confidence it's going to stay in the cone, especially, as it approaches landfall. So I think the track confidence is pretty high on this one. We've already got the hurricane warnings for the coast from Intracoastal City over to about Gulfport, Mississippi, with tropical storm warnings over to Cameron and then going over to Mobile Bay there. Um, and so then, what's the estimated time of arrival of winds? Because that's the problem with the cone product, is it only shows you where the center is going to be where. But for hurricanes, especially a large one, like you saw in that satellite picture, for a large hurricane like Ida, the impacts are going to arrive well before the center. So the Hurricane Center does this in two ways. They have this graphic that I have up right now, which is the earliest reasonable time of arrival of tropical storm force winds. And basically what they expect is that, they run a bunch of different scenarios based on, kind of what's the confidence in the forecast and all. And they're saying 90% of the simulations, in only 10% of the simulations did the tropical storm force winds arrive before the time there. So there's a 90% chance the tropical storm force winds will arrive at or before Sunday morning on here. Don't get too much in the details. Just think of this. This is kind of your ETA, and how you could think about this from like a how should I prepare point of view is you basically want to be where you're going to ride out the storm by this time. If you're going to ride out the storm in Baton Rouge, you want to be in Baton Rouge by Sunday morning. If you're planning to evacuate to Shreveport, you want to be out of those areas by that time. So the way I like to look at it in this particular case, you want to have your, plans in place, your windows boarded up, your sandbags, all of that, your grocery shopping done by Sunday morning. That's to give you the safest confidence window for having your preparations done before the tropical storm force winds arrive. They also do the most likely, and you can see there's not a huge difference here, and that's because we're getting closer and closer in time, so that earliest reasonable most likely should be getting close to the same. So you see Sunday morning to late Sunday afternoon right here. So again, there's the Sunday morning line is in South Louisiana, and then it really just only backs it up a little bit. So again, there's not a big difference here because it's a fairly confident forecast. So the most likely arrival time, that's when it's time to hunker down. Be prepared to hunker down at your location Sunday morning to Sunday afternoon. So that's the day it looks like things are going to start going downhill, a Sunday. And then just going back over to our cone graphic over here. So then we're looking at landfall late Sunday night, so 2 in the morning Monday. It'll be moving on shore. It seems like these things are always overnight, right? And then it won't be really departing until sometime Monday afternoon. So you're really looking at things going downhill through the day Sunday, probably the worst conditions overnight Sunday night into early Monday morning. And this would apply for both Lafayette and Baton Rouge. Pretty much anywhere near or south of I-10, this is going to hold true. And then things should start to steadily improve late Monday. I mean, really, as even going into Monday, it's still going to be rocking. And then probably not looking at the storm really getting out there till Monday night, probably Tuesday before things are kind of settled down. So really expect Sunday and Monday to be sheltering in place from this hurricane. A couple other things we'll look at before I pull up some of the models here. Going for potential rainfall. Rain, it always seems like kind of the underrated threat with hurricanes. We focus a lot on the wind, but the rain, and actually a little fact here is that inland rainwater-induced freshwater flooding is actually the deadliest phenomena associated with hurricanes. So here's the rainfall amounts that are based on the current track and intensity of it. Southeast Louisiana, including Baton Rouge and New Orleans, you're like 10 inches of rain's looking like a pretty good bet. Over towards Lafayette might be a little lower, 5-6 inches of rain. And then some areas near into the east of wherever the center makes landfall. So I'm looking at, Houma, maybe even western portions of the New Orleans metropolitan area, even up towards Baton Rouge, could see more than 15 inches of rain with this. So a lot of rain. I wouldn't say extraordinary for a hurricane. This, as you saw on the map, it looks like it is going to get out of here. This isn't looking like a Hurricane Harvey where it's just going to sit in Louisiana for 5 days and drop, 30, 40 inches of rain. But are some areas going to get more than a foot of rain? Sure. And that's certainly enough to cause some flooding issues. I don't think we're looking at widespread catastrophic flooding like the August 2016 event or Hurricane Harvey, but certainly enough to cause problems. with that. Let's go over and look at some of the forecast models now. So the first one I have up here, this is the GFS, the American model as they call it in the media sometimes. And we're just looking at surface wind speed, wind direction, and pressure on this. This is the latest run of it. It's loading kind of slowly here, so let's give it a minute. And now one thing with these, so we're not really in the range of the high resolution models yet. With these global models like the GFS, and I'm going to show the European model, they don't really get those really fine details like the eye wall of the storm very well. So the winds that you're going to see on this are actually a little bit lower than what will probably occur on here. So just think of it, we're more looking at this just kind of get the big picture on here. So we go forward in time, and then here's Saturday morning. This is kind of getting into Saturday evening. It's coming onto the frame in the lower right. I might need to move my screen a little bit here so you can see more of the Gulf of Mexico. And then as we get closer in time, here's Sunday afternoon. And then this right here, this one is a little bit faster. This model is showing landfall more like Sunday evening. This would be 7 p.m. Central Time on Sunday right here. And again, we're not going to take these winds as a gospel, but just kind of going off the pressure, those like 950 some odd millibars you see on that. That's usually about a Category 2, Category 3, probably more like Category 3 hurricane on there. Nevertheless, a very strong hurricane. So again, I wouldn't take this at face value. We're just trying to kind of get the idea of it. So again, just like that Hurricane Center forecast is showing at the landfall there between Grand Isle, here's Grand Isle over here, Morgan City, like that. Takes it inland, kind of over, at least this model takes the center inland over, it looks like about Assumption Parish, right over Ascension Parish, and then kind of pretty much right over the Baton Rouge metro area is what this model shows here. And if I just go back and compare that to what the Hurricane Center has in their forecast, like I said, just to kind of compare the two, looks like the Hurricane Center forecast is just to the west of this particular model on here. Now I will pull up the European model. It's kind of the other big one we like to look at. Wait for this to load. And kind of the same rules apply with the European model. It's not going to get all the fine details of the storm. We're just kind of getting the big picture of this as we step forward in time. So this right here would be Sunday morning. This is going to be Sunday evening. And notice the European model is actually a little stronger than the GFS model. I mean, this is down the 940s right here, 940-ish millibars, which that would be comparable. That's easily a Category 3 hurricane on there. And then we're showing landfall almost right at Morgan City. So it looks like the Hurricane Center forecast is a little closer to this one. And again, with this, it's taking those worst conditions over places like Houma, up through Assumption Parish, into the Baton Rouge area. So while it does track very close to Lafayette, considering the worst conditions tend to be on the on the east side of the storm, where you have these winds that are coming straight in from the Gulf right here, these southerly winds. Right here, that's going to put places like Baton Rouge and New Orleans in the worst of it, especially Baton Rouge. And that I am far more concerned about Baton Rouge than I am New Orleans. To put things in perspective, I kind of hate the direct comparison of hurricanes like this looks like such and such hurricane, because even if the tracks are similar, the sizes can be different, the forward speed is different, there's a lot of different things, but the closest modern example I can think of is it kind of looks like Hurricane Gustav a little bit in terms of track. Hurricane Gustav made landfall as a high-end Category 2 hurricane. This is forecast to be a 3 or even, well, it's forecast to be a 4. So forecast to be a Category 4. So given that track, given that intensity, I mean, this is, like I said, without trying to get too specific and, oh, this is going to be just like or worse than such and such hurricane, that's kind of one comparison you can loosely make, is that maybe, even a little more than what Baton Rouge got for Hurricane Gustav just based on that track. Again, assuming this is a perfect forecast, that's another problem there. So let's zoom in and, well, first actually, I'm going to pull up the, the spaghetti models, as people like to call them, just so you can see what those look like. So here's those spaghetti models for the hurricane, and it's easy to, sometimes these will catch your eye, or some of these will catch your eye, but notice these that go right through the middle, you see how tightly clustered these are? These are actually most of the big ones here. You have some of the consensus models in there, the GFS is in that right there. So this is really what the Hurricane Center is kind of zeroing in on, is this tight cluster of models that's making landfall right around or a little bit to the west of Grand Isle, and then again going very near or just west of Baton Rouge, and then eventually up into Mississippi. So that just goes back to how Baton Rouge looks like it. This is now what we call the late cycle track guidance, which this has more the stronger models in it, the better track record models in it, or in this late cycle one. And once again, you see that tight clustering that's there between Morgan City and Grand Isle. So I think that is looking pretty good. In personal experience lately, when you start getting within 72 hours, like we are here, the confidence starts getting pretty good, especially seeing the models clustered that tightly. I don't think we're going to see any big shifts in the track. Even if it went just to the west of this clustering right here, that could mean a little more for Lafayette than is currently forecast, because it would be almost right over Lafayette at that point. So while I say I think I'm more concerned about Baton Rouge, that's not to let Lafayette off the hook there. Again, if it went just to the west of this, it's coming right over you. Likewise, if it went just to the right of this, it would go almost right over, or right in between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. That would maybe be a bit of an improvement for Baton Rouge, but not very much. And of course, it would be much worse for New Orleans if it went to the right side of this. So this is all a long way of saying I think Baton Rouge is the place I'm most confident about getting fairly serious impacts. Lafayette is a little more questionable, since it looks like you're probably going to be on the west side of the storm, but I don't want to let you off the hook. Still prepare for, a pretty big hurricane here, because again, if it goes just to the west of where you see all those models clustered, it's coming right over Lafayette. And then same thing for New Orleans, if you got if friends or family in New Orleans, right there. Just to the right there could make things much scarier for New Orleans. At that point, you're looking at a track much like Hurricane Betsy in 1965. Again, trying to avoid the direct comparisons, but just to kind of discuss what the track might look like on there. And then we'll look at the intensity models on here, which these are interesting. So here's the intensity guidance on this. So the Hurricane Center, they're towards the high end of this. The Hurricane Center forecast is actually way up here. Trying to find it's the gray one. Okay, it's kind of buried under all these, but they're actually towards the high end of this cluster. You see how there's this group of models on here that's pretty tightly clustered. They're on the high end of that. But notably, there are a couple of models that are even stronger than what the Hurricane Center has. They all keep it Cat 4. Though, at that point, a Category 4 hurricane, that's a Hurricane Laura, was a Category 4 last year. If you get a Category 4 landfall right there, it's going to be, pretty catastrophic for, say, Terrebonne Parish especially. And then just looking at another little, that's track guidance. Looking at a little bit more of the intensity guidance on there. Again, the Hurricane Center is actually on the high end. It looks like they're this is the previous Hurricane Center forecast, so they've since nudged that up to around, I think they did 120 knots, so they're on the high end of those models right there. And that's just because the satellite presentation is looking so good on it. The Gulf of Mexico is very warm. There's not really any reason for it to not intensify. In fact, it could intensify very quickly once it gets over the Gulf of Mexico. So I think their forecast of a Category 4 at landfall is very reasonable. That's a very plausible scenario that we're looking at a Category 4 landfall Sunday evening. Like I said, in kind of that Morgan City to Grand Isle vicinity. Now with that we've looked at the models, just showing kind of what the local weather service offices have in terms of impact. So this is the wind threat, is what they're showing here. Now, this does require a little explanation. So if the forecast verified perfectly, the winds would not be nearly this strong over this large of an area. Some areas, yes. Especially, again, the center of the track is kind of right where I'm doing the cursor, across this little tip of Terrebonne Parish, and then just to the west of Baton Rouge. You would certainly get these really high winds across Terrebonne, Lafourche, and Assumption, even possibly into Ascension Parish with that. But what they're doing here is they're saying if we take the current track and kind of account for some of the uncertainty in the forecast, what should people prepare for? And that's why you see Lafayette's actually the very edge of this high-end wind threat here, is because they're saying if, again, remember if you think back to those models I showed, if it went just to the west of that, it's going to put Lafayette right in that right front eye wall of the hurricane, which is the worst place to be. So it doesn't take a huge shift in the track to put it in Lafayette, but I think the confidence is higher towards Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Indeed, you can see how this pink area does go further in there. So here's the storm surge threat. Not really a problem for Baton Rouge or Lafayette. They're both pretty far inland, but again, the worst storm surge is going to be just to the east of where the center makes landfall. So Morgan City, Grand Isle is, I'm definitely very concerned. Grand Isle, anything outside of the hurricane protection levee system through southeast Louisiana. I saw that there's, I believe I saw, and don't quote me on this, but I believe I saw that there was an evacuation order for even parts of New Orleans outside of the levee system on there. That's the other thing. This map does not take into account any levees. This is just outside of the levee system. That's when you see it, kind of that hole where New Orleans is it's surrounded by levees there. So anything outside of levees in southeast Louisiana is in for a rough ride when it comes to storm surge. Flooding rain threat, again, the heaviest rain going to be near and to the right of where the center makes landfall. That could be, in fact, in some ways, could be a bigger concern for New Orleans. I mean, as we all know, they have to pump the water out of the city, and if New Orleans, picks up 10 to 15 inches of rain out of this hurricane, that's going to cause some problems with that. And then I would be remiss if I did not mention the tornado threat. Always a concern with hurricanes. Interestingly, with tornadoes, that tends to be further away from the center. So I think the tornadoes are going to be the bigger concern getting out towards, into southern Mississippi, though even ahead of the storm. So I mentioned that about things starting to go downhill on Sunday. That's one issue on Sunday we'll have to watch out for, is tornadoes on those outer rain bands. Not a huge threat. These don't usually produce a lot of tornadoes, but just kind of something to keep in mind. Have a way to receive the warnings. Make sure the wireless emergency alerts are enabled on your phone, because that will go off for a tornado warning. I still recommend having a weather radio and set it up to, a modern one you can program to go off for a tornado warning just for your parish. So I would definitely look into something like that. Now the very last thing I'm going to do is just pull up kind of what they're showing for the local impacts. I'll have to make sure they actually have the latest forecast in this. So what I like to do is look at, so I can put in, let's do, for example, we'll start at Lafayette on here. And if you go to the hurricane local statement on here, and sometimes you have to kind of search the page, it's kind of a long product, but you can fish out, this is 4:27 p.m., so this is based on the most recent forecast. So I said this on a chat to a few people here, but to explain a little bit more. So this is just a text-based product. They have latest local forecast. Tropical storm force winds remain possible. Peak wind 20 to 30 gusts to 40. And I know what you're saying. That doesn't sound like anything, and well, that's not very strong, in fact. But what that first line is saying if the forecast, as shown, the current track with the center making landfall right there between Morgan City and Grand Isle, at that intensity, at that size, if it was a perfect forecast, that's what you would see, most likely see in Lafayette, something in that ballpark. But notice what they say right below that. Threat to life and property that includes typical forecast uncertainty, potential for wind greater than 110. And that goes back to what I was saying is, if there's an error in the forecast that is within kind of the normal realm of uncertainty here, the winds could go much higher. So, you know what they say, you know, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Well, they're saying that your worst case scenario is still a high end impact for Lafayette on there. I don't think that's very likely at this point. It might actually end up falling somewhere in between that. I wouldn't get too obsessed with these numbers. So to hammer this point home, get ready for a hurricane if you're in Lafayette. Like, you know, don't go, well, they're only saying 40. Again, that's if this is a perfect forecast, which even if it's a good forecast, it's probably not going to be perfect. And then we'll do the same thing looking at Baton Rouge. I'll actually kind of click down between Baton Rouge and Prairieville so I can kind of get like more of the whole metropolitan area here, because that's where it put the point. So if I go in here, and I'll specifically look down in Ascension Parish, because I know of some folks in Ascension Parish that are watching this. So I'm there, okay, 4:12 p.m., that's storm surge warning. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. Gonzales and Donaldsonville. Looking at that and see, doing that same thing again. You assume a perfect forecast. They're saying 55 to 70 with gusts to 85. On there is the latest forecast, but once again, potential for wind greater than 110 miles per hour on that. So you could see that the most likely outcome is a lot higher for Baton Rouge on there than it is for Lafayette, but neither location is out of the woods. You know, even Lafayette, again, prepare for a hurricane. I think the threat is high on the higher end for Baton Rouge compared to Lafayette. And then lastly, I'm going to check New Orleans on there just in case there's any folks that are interested in that area that are tuning into this broadcast here. Let me find it. Like I said, sometimes you have to do a little scrolling around. There's the storm surge warning for nope, that's so bear with me while I look for it. Nope, that's not it. Oh, that was it. Okay. So here it is. Here's the text. Like I said, it's kind of a wordy product. I just like to look at because buried in that can be some interesting information. Peak wind forecast 45 to 60 at gusts to 75. They're saying potential for 74 to 110. So I don't think the wind threat for New Orleans is looking quite as severe as it is for Baton Rouge and potentially Lafayette. In New Orleans, I think New Orleans, the bigger issue is going to be worrying about storm surge and rain because it's, as we know, below sea level on there. But of course, if the track were to be further to the east like that, it could get concerning for New Orleans. So with that, that's kind of all I had prepared in there. If there's any questions, you can ask them in the little chat feature. I'll pull up the satellite image again while we wait. It's kind of my point of this is, you know, I think the Hurricane Center forecast, you know, looks really good based on the models on there. The models look very confident. Just kind of to editorialize a little, I don't think we're going to see any big changes in the track forecast. I mean, that's pretty good looking agreement for the track. I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes there. But again, it wouldn't take a really big change to change the outcome for Lafayette by quite a bit. That's the concern with that's always the hard part with these things is, you know, a difference of 40 to 50 miles will you know can make quite a big difference, and then but like I said, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, I think that's where my bigger concern is Baton Rouge and New Orleans. So I guess I'll stop there. In terms of sharing this, feel free to share it with other friends and family members like that. I'm gonna edit it real quick. I'll share out a kind of edited version, so you don't have to sit through all the sound check stuff on there. But yeah, that's all I've got on there, and we'll probably do another one of these tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in.